Hey, it's Jim from Radio Wasteland Records. Earlier this year, we bought a huge collection that's loaded with rare and obscure psychedelic rock. Now, join us as we go through these boxes and unearth some psych rock treasures. The Velvet Underground is one of those bands that seem to transcend the subgenres that we see within Discogs. Is it psychedelic rock? Is it proto-punk, pre-punk? Is it classic rock? Is it avant-garde experimental? Joining us today to help sort all of this out is the vinyl community's Steve Carlson, who is probably one of the most and foremost experts that I know of on Velvet Underground. Steve, thanks for being here, man.
You bet.
Check out his channel, by the way. We'll put a link to that in the description. But the Velvet Underground is one of those bands that's tremendously important to you. We've talked about this several times. I know you talk about it on your channel as well, but it's one of the bands that helped shape you.
It is. I got into them in the 80s. Actually, a record store owner got me into the Velvet Underground. Says, here, try this, because he's looking at what I was buying. And it changed. It's one of those, wow, the heavens open up, the sunlight hits you, and you go, wow, this is an experience. And I became a fan. And it's only grown bigger with age. A lot of other groups you love, they kind of fall off. The Velvet Underground continues to grow as you dig into it and you find the special nuances in what you love about it. And yes, it is huge.
Well, we talked about how it transcends a few different genres. Let's start at the beginning with this first and foremost album, The Velvet Underground and Nico. Now, we've got a couple of different examples to show off today, one from Steve's collection and one from mine here. I should mention, too, that a lot of these are coming from the collection that we talk about here on Psych Rock Spot that has provided such a wealth of obscure and some not so obscure psychedelic rock. Absolutely. But that's the reason I asked Steve to stop by, is because, okay, can we classify this as psychedelic rock? Now, this first album, The Velvet Underground and Nico, touches on a lot of different places, but this is also one of the most important albums of one of the most important bands for you.
Absolutely. This, it just starts off, in bringing music into a different direction. And that was the thing, when this came out, it was so different. And I think they went psych because in the background, Andy Warhol would be playing his movies, and there would be the lights and different kind of stuff that you would see in a Pink Floyd concert. So it's kind of psychedelic. But you listen to that music, I don't feel that psych. To me, it's art rock. It's more avant-garde. It was so different. Nothing like it.
And the differences in that music was really because of I don't want to call it a clash, but I don't know of any other word for that, kind of a clash of creativeness between Warhol with the visuals, Lou Reed, and John Cale.
Yes, absolutely. John Cale was from Wales, but he came to New York City because he loved drone, and there was a musician whose name I can't remember, but he wanted to come there and study with him, and he learned about just using drone as a music. Now, to sit there and listen to drone and go, is it music or not? But Reed was a songs craftsman. He worked for the Brill. He made the hit The Ostrich. He loved writing tunes with a chorus, with verse. So those two together were these opposites. But Warhol, well, actually, they were together before. Warhol just picked them up and go, I like these guys because they'll be good for my movies. And they made some spectacular music, the two albums they were together.
And in this album, you throw in Nico on some of the vocals as well, which really adds a different flavor to this.
Absolutely. She has softness, this monotone voice, but it's so soft. So the songs that were written for Nico were really quiet and very much just Lou Reed songs. You didn't add in the drone, but they're beautiful. They're shall we say, pretty. And it's so different than the other stuff that was on the album.
Now, the Velvet Underground progressed, and Cale was only with them for, as you mentioned, 2 albums. Yeah. By the time we get to an album like Loaded, which was their 4th album, the song stylings, you really see Reed taking over. They become more pop-like. This has, obviously, some of the Velvet Underground's biggest hits from Sweet Jane and Rock and Roll, a little heftier, but then you get something like Who Loves the Sun, and that could very well be a Beatles knockoff.
Absolutely. Reed when Cale left, and again, those two by the second album, they did not like each other. In fact, Reed wanted him out, but he made Sterling Morris and Mo Tucker, actually Sterling Morris, go over and tell him, hey, you're out. And these other two actually liked Cale. So Reed wanted control. He wanted hits. He wanted to have a hit album. And this was his last album. When he made Loaded, he was so excited. He goes, I have made these incredibly good songs. They should do it. It's going to go big. And like every other Velvet Underground, nobody cared. It disappeared. And that was the end of Lou Reed with the Velvet Underground.
But on to a really fantastic solo career.
Absolutely.
As well as John Cale to moderate success, and Nico as well. But that's another story. Well, let's get back to this one, the Velvet Underground and Nico. You see that we hold up two different versions of this, and the influential nature of this album can be felt throughout various genres down the line.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, punk bands, alternative bands in the 80s, hard rock bands.
Yeah. It took this album 10 years to sell even 100,000 copies. But once it began going, it became legendary, and group after group would listen to this and find some stuff. When you think of punk, this to me is one of the very first punk albums. I mean, obviously the Stooges took it to the next level, but it was that influence. But even you think of these, the metal bands, the droning, the different things like that. This was the album that really got them going. So important to so many people, and now it's just like the album, and it has probably influenced more albums than any other band to me in the history. Now you could say, okay, someone's going, oh, the Beatles do. Well, this took music in a different direction,
and I think because of that, the early pressings and the first pressings like Steve has of this become tremendously collectible. Yes. But there's a couple of other reasons that these become rare and very sought after. The first of which is what you can see on the cover. Warhol's design stated that there would be a sticker, a banana, on the cover. And as you can see with Steve's copy, someone wanted to see what was underneath. This copy is a little more intact, but the removal of the sticker helps add to just the mystique, but the value of this as well.
Yes, absolutely. You got a full sticker. I mean, that's what you want, that full sticker.
I mean, they even put on right in the cover, peel here and see. Yep. So we need to see what's on there.
They just must have started from the bottom. I don't know.
But it's not only just the banana on the front, but it's the rear of the album that really determines the rarity and the value of something like this. And that has to do with this picture on the background of the back of the album. Yep. Tell us a little bit about why that is and how that came about.
So you'll see on there, it's a gentleman's named Eric Emerson. He was part of the Warhol factory, one of the actors in those crazy Warhol films. Well, when they were having these scenes and the Velvet Underground's playing, Warhol was playing, putting all this video behind. Eric Emerson's face was on there because he's part of the factory. Well, he got he got arrested for drugs, heroin, and so he went to Warhol. Hey, help me out. Warhol says, no, I won't, because Warhol really didn't do that. Hey, it's your fault. So he decided, I'm going to sue instead for copyright because my face is on this album. So he put out a lawsuit on Andy Warhol and the Velvet Underground. And just a side note, they pulled the album. Yep. They yanked the album, and for a couple months, which tanked it, of course. And he wound up dying, I think within a year of heroin.
So it didn't go very far. But this then becomes a case, much like the Beatles' Butcher cover, where you've got an album that is pulled back out of the market, which then creates much more demand for it.
Yes, absolutely. This is the grail. For a Velvet Underground fan to have that image, it is the absolute grail.
Now, this is still a first year pressing, but not a first pressing. As you can see, the image on the back of the reworked album has been airbrushed to take that image out.
Yep. The first ones came out, they put a sticker over there. They covered the face with, I believe, a black sticker. Mm-hmm. And then as they were redoing more covers, they did the airbrushing.
So again, much like the different states of a Butcher cover, you've got different states of the Velvet Underground and Nico. Does it have the banana intact on the front? Does it have an airbrushed or a stickered on the back?
Absolutely. And you know, this album here, it has water damage. You can see that on there. Part of the banana's gone, but this image is what's important. And to have that, you know, maybe someday I'll find another one. It's just, you know, it's super rare and hard to find. You can see them out there, but this just meant everything. Found it here at Radio Wasteland too.
Thank you for that, by the way. But obviously, too, the condition of the vinyl comes into play on this. But this is one of those cases where it's the whole package that brings it in. So if you've got early pressings that have the full banana, but no image on the back, it has already been airbrushed, or the sticker, you're looking at something that is less valuable than even a water damaged one with the image intact.
Yeah, definitely. The price of this just skyrockets with that image, because it's what the collectors of this group really want and desire. And until Jim had this, I'd never seen one out in the wild, and the vinyl was beautiful shape. So I can live with water damage.
Something like this, a good early pressing with the banana and nice vinyl on the inside, could fetch easily triple digits. That one magnifies it.
Yeah, it does. This now it jumps into $300-400 range. If it's in perfect condition, even more. It's such a cool album, and you can see they're trying to give the psychedelic look on there, and I really have a hard time putting the album in the right place. But look at that. You know, that's what they were trying to really get this labeled as a psych album, but it's not.
And that's okay, because regardless of whether you consider it to be psychedelic rock or avant-garde or experimental, pre-punk, the whole idea of proto-punk, I still consider this maybe pre-punk.
Yeah.
Because it still is falling well within that time. Absolutely. Before there's any heavier duty punk. But it's definitely an album to be on the lookout for. And if and when you find one, be aware of which state of the album you're looking at, and that'll help determine the value.
Yes, very much so.
Vinyl Community's Steve Carlson, thank you so much for being here. And again, check out his channel. We'll put a link below, and we like your videos, Steve.
All right, always a pleasure, Jim. Thanks for having me.
Thanks.